Stories from around the corner.
And around the country.
You're listening to All the Best.
Proudly supported by the Art Gallery of New South Wales.
You're listening to All the Best from FBI Radio 94.5. I'm Kwame Slusher. As we come to the end of the year, at All the Best, we thought we'd take some time to look back at some of the stories that we made over 2025. But before we get into this week's stories, I want to acknowledge that I'm recording from stolen Gadigal land and pay my respect to Gadigal elders past and present, and also recognize that the area where FBI Radio is situated, Redfern, has long been a place of storytelling, strength, resistance, and resilience for First Nations communities. 2025 is almost over. Everyone's sharing their best ofs, their wrapped, their rewinds, their recaps of the year. So, at All the Best, we thought we'd share some of the stories that really resonated with us, our own audio story retrospective. In this episode, our amazing volunteers at All the Best share with us the stories that really stuck with them from throughout the year. We'll just be playing the excerpts, but don't worry, we will have links to the full episodes and the full stories in the show notes. Our first Vol to share their pick is the amazing Patrick.
My favourite story on All the Best this year was the first half of episode 640, The Secondhand Bandit. It basically breaks down from a very community-oriented perspective how various employees of an op shop, a second-hand shop, felt when their shop kept getting robbed, seemingly by the same person, over and over for months on end. It also coined the phrase comrade vibes, which I think will enter the popular cultural lexicon forever now.
When something bad happens to one of us, it happens to all of us, and we all have to really band together to survive in this world.
Picture yourself in an op shop where, under corrugated iron ceilings, wall to wall, there are stacks of furniture, clothes, books, and every kind of item under the sun. This is the sort of place where people and objects from all walks of life might turn up, and the regular crowd shuffles about day in, day out, haggling over the price of a crate of old doorknobs, or the quality of a banjo with no strings. A wonky, lopsided place that's been around for decades and felt like a real part of the community. In 2023, this shop and the community of volunteers and regular customers that call it home were victims of a series of mysterious burglaries that not only devastated the charity itself, but also threatened to tear this community apart. This is the story of the Secondhand Bandit.
They broke in through the kitchen back door, so they broke a glass pane.
That's Andrew, the store manager, speaking now.
There's a kitchen, and then there's some back rooms, and the kitchen section is locked with a big gate. So when they first broke in, and they tried to come in through the kitchen, they couldn't get past the big gate. The door was kicked in, and there was actually a crowbar left on the kitchen table, which I thought was so fucking funny, because there's a hardware section. They could have just thrown the crowbar into the shop and be like, yeah, no. We would have never known that they used a crowbar, but they left it on the kitchen table. But I think they were wearing gloves or something because they didn't get any prints. I did laugh. I thought it was quite funny. But the crowbar there and everything, I was like, this is so cartoonish. Like, to break in with the crowbar and just rummage through everything, keys on the floor.
I also spoke to Brad, the truck driver.
We got asked to basically go to the door that got kicked in and help put it back together. The police still hadn't been there to do their whole forensics report and check the place out for prints. So we're trying to do the joinery on a door without actually getting our fingerprints on anything.
As soon as we realised that it was a break-in, the police were called. But their support was, less helpful than what we'd hoped for.
The police took ages to rock up. Nothing really came out of it because we didn't have any cameras in there. The prints came up with nothing, so nothing could be really done. The whole situation made me very aware that when you get burgled, if they're wearing gloves and you don't have cameras, there's a fat chance you're going to get anything back, or they're going to find anyone.
I guess it didn't really matter in the end because the police kind of just laughed at us anyway. I at least expected them to care a bit more. But also I'm not surprised, I guess.
I can't believe this actually happened. What a awful place to rob, it's a charity. I was like, what the hell?
For some of us, the first burglary seemed almost to be a moment of excitement, an event that broke out of the mundane day-to-day at the shop, and that would be talked about in the break room out the back for weeks to come. Others in the staff and volunteer community, though, weren't necessarily taking it the same way.
I thought it was going to happen again because I knew what our security system was like and the lack of... we knew that other neighbours were also getting robbed.
That's Maria talking, one of the other workers at the shop.
So I was just like, this is going to happen again. And because our neighbours were still getting, broken into, the whole thing screamed of sus, and it didn't provide a safe space, I didn't feel. So I was always anticipating.
You're listening to All the Best at FBI Radio 94.5. I'm Kwame Slusher, and that excerpt of an up-shop caper you just heard was from Secondhand Bandit, produced by Ramon Briant. Our next pick is from our Vols, Sue.
So one of the stories of this year I really like is the story by Shareeka called Weaving Ancestral Voice. The reason why I love it is because it feels like walking into a sanctuary made of sound, but also a sanctuary made of memory. And there's something really powerful about the way Shareeka talks about finding her voice. It made me think about where my own sense of voice comes from.
I often think about how my first relationship to sound was hearing an azan or a bhajan. Vocalizations that try to bring one closer to God. My parents insisted on an interfaith marriage, despite historical contexts of rupture and the beckoning of their family members not to. They got married at the only temple that would acknowledge their love, a roadside Murugan temple off the interstate highway in Coimbatore, India. I grew up surrounded by songs of worship. Islamic recitations and Hindu chants drenched our inner city flat. There was always something playing. Mohammed Rafi, ghazals, Mariah Carey, Bengali folk music, Hollywood soundtracks, the greatest hits of Ustad Zakir Hussain. Eventually, these sounds became a low hum in the background amid fighting and dysfunction. I soon abandoned them for punk archives and 2000s R&B. I continued to visit the masjid and temples, but quietly I had abandoned any practice of faith, unknowing how to separate devotion from dogma. But there was one voice that always pierced through.
I suppose my first experience of singing is really how natural and essential it was for me to make that kind of a noise.
The poet Kazim Ali writes of the voice of Sheila Chandra. Who can syllables like Sheila Chandra moan us, covered in a blanket of sound, carried cacophony, smoke a voice hits all the notes at once, devotional or pop or drone, same. I'd hold my ears against my parents' all-in-one FM tape and CD player. as though my body could dive into the binaural microtone resonances. I didn't know what the technical words were at the time. I just knew I wanted to be in this sound world, to understand the notes between notes, and why her voice made me feel like there was something specific and clear in the infinite and chaotic. When I didn't want to be in this world, I wanted to be in hers. Tethered, I felt like her vocals found me, enmeshed in her drones.
Particularly special about drone musics in that they have some kind of mechanism within the actual musical structure which enables them to transport people really, really easily, gives them that transcendent experience that they want. And the performer, I mean, ideally the performer is being transported and brings the audience along with them.
Her voice wove between genre and vocal stylizations that were familiar and dissonant all at once. I guess some people would call it fusion or world music, the colonial urge to render things into narrow categories.
I didn't really have those mental delineating borders. It was easier for me to hear technically how various genres of music, they're connected. Because, you know, structurally we're using the same things. We're using chords, or we're using drones, or we're using the same 12 semitones.
You're listening to All the Best, proudly sponsored by the Art Gallery of New South Wales on FBI Radio 94.5. I'm Kwame Slasher, and that very soothing excerpt was Weaving Ancestral Voices by Shareeka Helaluddin. The supervising producer was Mell Chun, and a special thanks to John Tjhia. Our next story recommendation takes place out in the bush. Here is Lindsey talking about the story that really stuck with her.
Well, for me, this year, the one that stood out to me is one that is thematically very relatable to some of my stories, and that was for the JCAF Audio Fellowship on Sandhill Dunnart. I guess I didn't really come to really capture the importance of not only animal conservation, but how much of a mystery it can be when trying to find various species that lurk from underground, and the amount of effort it goes to even finding something so small as like a marsupial mouse in the desert.
But then we met Sue and Rogan. They were this old couple living on the boat behind us. They were like Australia as I'd expected it to be. My brother, sister and I would bake these really bad biscuits and then row them across to Sue and Rogan to have an excuse to hang out on their boat. On their boat, they had wooden carvings of bats and books full of glossy animal photos. What I remember most vividly from these visits were Sue's stories, particularly the ones about sandhill Dunnarts. Dunnarts are these little marsupials. They're basically a rat in Australian font. Small enough to fit in the palm of your hand, carnivorous and extremely cute. They spend their days jumping around, scratching in the dirt looking for snacks. But what you really got to know about the sandhill Dunnart in particular is how hard they are to find. Chances are you and I will never see one, but Sue had. She had this outlandish story of going into the outback to look for the Dunnarts. Reflecting back on it as an adult, it seemed a bit too strange. So I called my sister Harry to cross-check that I wasn't the only one who remembered these visits to Sue and Rogan's boat. Confirm or deny, was Sue real?
Yes, Sue was a real person. I remember her green boat. I remember her talking to us about bats and Dunnarts. I remember I think she had released her book, Australian Bats, around the time then, because I remember she had like carvings, and she had like little models of bats or something on the boat, and I really wanted to play with them. Like I wanted to get my hands on them.
Sue was real, and so were the sandhill Dunnarts. These cryptic little animals have been lodged somewhere in my mind for 13 years. And recently, they came back to me. It started when I went home, Cooktown, far north Queensland. Cooktown is like the end of the road for Queensland. After it, the roads shift from tarmac seal to serrated dirt, and the northern wilderness takes over. If you're up here, you can spend your time looking through bushes for creatures, or you can dig down and find treasures in the soil. There is silica on the beaches, gold in the river silt, and bauxite in the red dirt. Along with these minerals, you'll also find plenty of FIFO workers in the Cape, fly-in and fly-out miners. I think of Cape York as this swath of wild things, with humans slowly chipping away at the edges. I think about industry and conservation a lot. And when I think about wildlife in particular, I do it through this lens of concern. You see, Australia is full of disappearing things. Night parrots, northern quolls, and palm cockatoos come to mind. I started thinking about the sandhill Dunnart again when earlier this year the Australian federal government was taken to court over their failure to protect the species. I googled the list of endangered Aussie mammals. There are 34 entries on this list. 4 of these are Dunnarts. I had no idea. As these animals disappear, the stories we tell about them do the same. I want to catch a sandhill Dunnart on tape. That means interviewing Sue. To do that, I need to find her.
You're listening to All the Best on FBI Radio 94.5. I'm Kwame Slusher, and that excerpt you heard was called Wanted, Dunnart Alive by Xanthe Smith, one of our 4 recipients of the Jesse Cox Audio Fellowship 2025. Our next excerpt will take you to the Philippines during a storm. Our volunteer Ray shares his pick.
The story that I love is Too Big Lang. I keep thinking about how we actually learn to understand about the disaster. It's not from the news or big explanation, it's from the people around us. What stayed with me were the quieter, more personal details that shape how each person makes sense of the chaos.
Too big lang for the children who can see. My 4-year-old nephew is jumping up and down, yelling, eyes agleam, voice descending the waterlogged stairs. I am stunned by his thrill, drowning his older sister's quiet telling about how their roof was lifted by the storm and blown far, far away. Oh, it flew with the birds. Too big lang, too big lang. Just water, just water. Little feet going splash, splash, toes tickling, then water up to his knees, then his waist. Will there be fishes? His eyes luminous with adventure and a joy bizarre, hers with terror. I can't swim. Because there's water and there's water. There's how it flows or not, flood or drought, drop on a sunlit branch or on a cheek just bruised, moisture on a hand forsaken or above the lips made fuller by desire, and tears or dry-eyed grief. My love, which one? So I like grieving underwater. No one sees, even when I surface, because it's all water. Too big lang just water, doing justice to sight. So I rise, always glowing, sun-kissed, water-blessed, and sanctified like the rocks, always clean, though broken. But water breaks too. That breakout dam, that snapped ice, that sudden choke in his throat when once she cried, "I think my water broke." That river broken by the border bridge where we can only stand and look across. My love, can you see me?
You're listening to All the Best on FBI Radio 94.5, and I'm Kwame Slusher. That beautiful piece was written and performed by Merlinda Bobbis. It was originally commissioned by Debris Magazine Issue 5, Prismatic Joy, and the sound design was by Tala Izawi. Our last volunteer pick might make you rethink your assumptions about dingoes. Imogen shares the story that really stuck with her the most.
I really liked the episode Humanimal. I brought a new perspective in on dingoes. I did not know that they were being targeted that much in the outback, and it was really interesting to learn about the Indigenous Australians' connection to dingoes.
Over a century ago, a ravenous dingo made an appearance in Rudyard Kipling's Just So Stories.
Still ran dingo. Yellow dog dingo, always hungry, grinning like a rat trap. Never getting nearer, never getting farther. Ran after kangaroo. He had to.
The dingo has always had defenders, though, and a debate about whether they should be hunted or protected has raged on for decades.
The question we'd all like answered, of course, is whether dingoes are goodies or baddies.
That's pioneering ecologist Dr. Alan Newsom in a 1978 CSIRO documentary. Almost 50 years later, the dingo is still cast as a baddie on the national stage. But dingo advocates say the debate isn't settled, and these days they're becoming more vocal than ever.
My first recollections of the dingo is, I guess, hearing negative things on the radio, the TV and things like that about, they're taking kids, they're doing this sort of thing.
That's Steve Trist, a dancer and educator who teaches Aboriginal culture.
I'm a proud Darug Murrawara Yuan man. I grew up in Western Sydney, and my totems are the red-bellied black snake and the sand goanna. That's a part of the connection I have to country, and I'm extremely proud to be able to say that and be able to share it with others.
These days, Steve reveres dingoes. But back when he was learning traditional dance as a kid, there were media frenzies over dingoes killing livestock, mauling humans, and snatching babies. But something didn't sit right with Steve about the dingo's bad reputation. It didn't reflect the reverence with which his own community saw the dingo. Portraying native animals was an important part of some of the dances he was learning.
We all used to argue about who wanted to play the part of the dingo. And I remember asking a couple of the elders, why are we doing the dingo if it's such a bad animal?
That's when Steve learned the animal's true history.
I remember hearing stories around what they really were about and what they did for our environment, our mobs. So I kind of made connections there, and I thought, well, wouldn't the dingo have been our best friend like a long time ago?
In his book, The Dingo Debate, canine specialist Dr. Bradley Smith explains that traditional Aboriginal society had a symbiotic partnership with dingoes for thousands of years. They were taken in by the women, raised alongside their children, and, in some cultures, even breastfed. Dingoes aided hunting, provided warmth, guarded against intruders, and were spiritual intermediaries between worlds.
You're listening to All the Best on FBI Radio 94.5. I'm Kwame Slusher. And you just listened to The Great Dingo Debate by Andrea Dixon, and the supervising producer was Thomas Phillips. And if you want to keep up with what's happening at All the Best, get a sense of what is happening behind the scenes, or you just want a bit of a wrap-up of our live events, just check out our Substack. I'll have a link for that in our show notes. And if you really enjoyed the excerpts that you heard, or you just love audio stories in general, then keep up with listening to All the Best for unique stories from independent audio makers from so-called Sydney and around the country. Definitely catch our live broadcast on Sundays at 9:30 a.m. on FBI Radio 94.5. We also release a brand new episode every Tuesday at 4 p.m. on allthebestradio.com, Spotify, and Apple Podcasts. So follow us now so you never miss an episode. All the Best is made at FBI Radio on Gadigal land, in association with SYN and 3RRR, on Wurundjeri Woi Wurrung and Boon Wurrung lands, and ACCC on Arrernte and Wirrumungu lands. The All the Best executive producer is Mel Bakewell. Katarina Fraga Matos is our events and partnerships coordinator. Patrick McKenzie is our community coordinator, and a special shout out to all our volunteers that make All the Best possible. Shining Bird composed our theme music, and Annie Hamilton designed the artwork. We're heard across Australia on the Community Radio Network, and we're made possible by the Art Gallery of New South Wales and the Community Broadcasting Foundation. You can find our full archive of more than 600 episodes on allthebestradio.com. I'm Kwame Slusher. Thank you so much for listening.